Your alternative talk radio contact. The Planet. KGRAradio.com.
With infinite complacence, people went to and fro the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Into the Fray. And before we get to my talk with Max Hawthorne, first a welcome to new patrons over on patreon.com. Christopher, Bear, Brian, Josh, Solar Max, Richard, Eric, Heath, Casey, Karina, and Jerry. And again, you can become a patron by going to patreon.com and search Into the Fray. You can see there are 4 different reward levels, and even the $5 level in and of itself is quite spectacular because not only do you get your own private RSS feed amongst other things, but like last night, we had our live video chat, and those happen monthly, if not more. So head on over to patreon.com and see which level works for you. Couple of things to mention under Beyond the Fray Publishing and our sub-imprint, Doomsday Press. We've got, of course, the audiobook version of Ken Gerhard's The Essential Guide to Bigfoot available now. Of course, go to Amazon.com for that. And also on Amazon, we've got the dystopian science fiction novel Dark Matter by Alyssa Huckleberry. Again, head to Amazon.com for all of that and all of our other books. And we are not done. We've got 2 more coming up for this month, so keep an eye out for that on all of our social media outlets, or by visiting beyondthefraypublishing.com or doomsdaybooks.com. Still on the hunt for those Bigfoot stories for Beyond the Fray Bigfoot Part 2? Email me, Shannon, at intothefrayradio.com. And without further ado, my chat with author Max Hawthorne. How many times have we done this now, Max? How many times have you been on iTF? I mean, you are my sea creature guy, the water cryptid guy. You've been on a number of times, and if anyone is wanting to listen to your past episodes, of course, they can either go to the search feature at intothefrayradio.com. You can type in Max or Hawthorne or Max Hawthorne or Sea Creatures, and all of his episodes will pop up. And also, I will link in the show notes all of his past episodes. So just go to this episode on the website and you can find all of that. Well, Max, how you doing?
I am doing splendidly. Thank you so much. How are you?
I am doing excellent as well. And, well, we have some big news before we dig into some of these tales that we're going to talk about today. And that is, you are now part of the Beyond the Fray Publishing family. So welcome aboard.
Thank you so much. It is, as Benny Hill used to say, an honor and a privilege.
I thank you, sir. As much as you want to say about what that book might be about, it may not be hard to guess, but we're going to be a little quiet about the specifics of it so far, right?
Specificities?
Yes.
If anybody knows my proclivities to writing books about giant marine predators, especially creatures that are supposed to be extinct, etc., then obviously it's going to be something in that vein, pun intended. All the blood in the water type stuff, etc. But yes, it will be a marine terror type book like I've done before. Branching off from a little bit from the novel that was just released a couple weeks ago. But yeah, it's going to be exciting stuff. People are going to be. It's going to be gripping, and when you finish reading it, you're not going to want to go in the water again. Let's put it that way.
Definitely not. Yeah, no, I mean, just in case someone thought, well, maybe Max is going to all of a sudden write about Bigfoot, but just Bigfoot in the water, because there are a few reports of those guys swimming, but maybe if one comes across your path, it may end up in there. But for now, I think we'll stay in the, like as you said, in the vein that people are used to you kind of honing in on and staying in that lane.
Well, I had toyed with the idea of writing a story about a gigantic Bigfoot that spontaneously grows gills and is able to become, purely aquatic, sort of like the giant prehistoric sloths that we used to actually have during, I think, the Miocene, that were aquatic animals, believe it or not, giant sloths. But I'm thinking like Bigfootosaurus versus like Krakenzilla 67, something like that. One of these really like ultra realistic books that just people just can't put down, with about 60 errors per page, and that type. No, not exactly.
That would be terrifying. Anyway. By the way, a Bigfoot that his evolution is now he's got gills. We'd really be screwed, I'd say. Can
you imagine?
Oh, no.
It would be, instead of Aquaman, used under what's the I can't forget the term. Fair use, yeah. It would be Aquafoot.
Aquafoot.
It's good stuff.
And he'll
coming
be
to a theater near you.
Yeah, he'll be a little cleaner depending on what body of water he's swimming in. Maybe a little fresher than some of these other big feetses that we hear of out there. But yeah, I mean, for Kraken 67, I mean, at that point you might be needing to come up with something similar to that. It wouldn't be a bad idea.
Well, the thing is like readers. I mean, my last novel came out in 2018, about 2 years ago to be exact. And the plan was to have the current book that just came out, Cronus Rising Kraken 3, was supposed to be out a year ago. But, there were medical issues and all those things like that. And, life just sometimes gets in the way, So I had tons. I'm not going to make excuses. I was just, physical therapy stuff takes your toll. You can't write if your head's not in the game.
Yeah.
But, I was very pleased with the finished product. It's got like almost every review has been 5 stars on Amazon. And, I mean, you got to, I don't even think I deserve the praise. I mean, you hear these people, they're like, I'm praying this isn't the last book in the series. Is there another book? Please tell me there's another book. Pretty please, Max. Almost every review is asking for another book. And they're already asking me, the book just came out and everybody wants the next novel, but it's a little stressful. They start stalking you after a while. I mean, like I try not to give out my personal email, but the publisher was, constantly getting emails from people that, when is the book coming out? What is the title of the new book? When will it be released? Will it be in hardcover? I mean, like a million questions, and you have to like hide out after a while, But I'm happy because with the book that I'm doing for you guys, I mean, it'll be out sooner before people know it, God willing. So they'll have that, and then we'll see what's next on the horizon. But the next Cronus book, I mean, I know you haven't read the book yet, but I left the door open. Like I could leave the series right now if I wanted to.
Right. In
terms of like I tied up all the major loose ends and all the main character arcs, have been completed. There's one or two where people just, if they don't read, they're not savvy readers, apparently one or two, they can't figure out what happened to this or what happened to that. And I'm not going to, go around and hold people's hands and explain it. It's all in there.
Right.
But, the book is, I have left the door open. If I want to do another Cronus Rising book, I certainly can, and I probably will.
That's your Krakenites. They need their fix, so you're going to have to get on that.
My Kraken heads.
Kraken heads, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So at this, I'm not trying to make this into any kind of a spoiler, including for myself, because as you said, I need to read these, and I do want to, and I will. However. And I, don't give out anything. I know you won't. You're good at stuff like that. But was there, a character death that, you got slammed for in the reviews, or you got emails and messages going, how could you do that? That was shocking. Have you had an arc like that?
Well, I mean, this is like, George R.R. Martin writing about sea monsters, basically. I mean, you got to break a lot of eggs to make an omelet.
Yeah.
Part of my shtick is that I don't underdevelop characters. A lot of writers out there, whether they're lazy or they just don't feel like it's worth the effort, or I don't know what. But even minor characters, and sometimes even major characters, they don't put enough identity into them. I try and make sure that even your supporting characters, your good guys, your bad guys, your red shirts, most times when you read a book, you can see a red shirt coming a mile away. Yeah. You're like, oh, he's a bad guy, he's going to get it, or he's a nobody, he's going to get eaten by the monster, or whatever it might be. I like to develop my characters so that you feel a kinship to all of them, whether you love them or hate them or whatnot. So, it's harder to tell what's going to happen. It makes it more shocking and has more impact. That's just a personal style, I guess. But there was one or two major character deaths on the protagonist side in the new book, which I'm not going to get into. It wasn't as bad as Kraken Volume 2.
Okay.
In Kraken Volume 2, my favorite character was killed off. And many other people's favorite characters, especially the women, they were very upset with me that this guy bought it. And I'm trying to decide if I could get into it or not. I mean, the book was 2 years ago, but people were just reading them. Let's just say that he was a warrior by trade, and he died with his boots on, as the saying goes. And he did manage to take his arch enemy, ultimate adversary, with him. So, it wasn't
so slightly satisfying in a way, right?
Yeah. The problem is just people just really love the character. So there was a lot of one reader. I mean, there were several men told me that they cried when they read that book.
Wow.
So for a male reader to come out and tell you that, the story brought tears to their eyes.
Yeah.
That's...
You did your job. I mean, that's got to feel kind of good.
Guys won't come out and say that normally,
Yeah.
And there was one reader who, when that scene happened, he was so upset and furious. He said he literally threw the book across the room, and he couldn't open it past that point for 3 months.
Aww.
He literally waited 3 months before he could pick up the book and continue.
That's a hell of a compliment, really.
Yeah, as long as I can get hit with the book.
Did you have anybody swear you off? Like going, you know what? I'm so pissed. I'm not going to buy another book from you, Mr. Hawthorne.
No, it's been more along they all want the book, which is, incredibly flattering.
Yeah.
It's more like, how could you do that? Why did you do that? That was my favorite character. Please tell me he's still alive. Please tell me he didn't really die. Can you bring him back? Is there a way?
You're like, it's not that kind of book. I mean, I guess it could be.
When a thermonuclear device goes off 15 feet from where you're standing,
damn,
odds are pretty slim about you coming back.
I don't know. There could be a chance. Heck, there's stranger things that have happened. Kind of a bummer, though. Thermonuclear device is there's a slight finality to that.
Actually,
I don't know.
2 of them.
Okay, never mind. He's gone.
He's
gone, guys. Sorry. I'll let it go.
Yeah, but I knew I had to do it. I knew he had to go.
Yeah.
And when you get to the end of Kraken 3, everything starts to make sense. Okay, because originally these books were all supposed to be one novel, the Kraken parts, not the whole Cronus Rising series. Like Cronus Rising was a big book by itself. It was 600 pages, and they scrunched it to make it 600. It probably would have been 800 pages if they hadn't shrank the font and eliminated margins and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. So it was a big book. Okay, but and that was a standalone story. But at the end, it left the door open for obviously future novels. The Kraken book was supposed to be one novel, and what happened is I had been planning this book for the better part of a decade, honestly. And I would collect, if you're a writer, your imagination is your bread and butter. So me, I come up with book ideas in my sleep. I mean, plots, entire new books. I got a list of 30 novels based on stuff that's coming to me in my sleep. I don't know why it does, but it just does, But so it's over a course of a decade, I had collected so much data for this book: characters, stories, scenes, dialogue, technology. I mean, it just as I started writing it, I was at the 550 page mark of the first book, and I had to tell the guys, I'm like, this book is not going to be we're going to have to do something here because, this is going to be like a 1,000-page novel at least. And it turns out, so they were like, well, let's split it up. Can you find an end point where you could sort of close off some character arcs but keep the story going? So I did that. But then it kept going and going and going. So it ended up that if it was one novel, it would have been 1,800 pages or close to it. And that's just impossible. I mean, that's bigger than a Stephen King book. No printer will touch it. So, they ended up being 3 stories. And that's why if you, had it all together, if you read them as a trilogy, they go one into the other. There's no time, span or break between them or even the scenery. It all connects together like pieces of a puzzle. But killing that character was very hard. I just knew that he had to go because it was necessary. And I knew it would have a lot of shock value because, he's like your superhero. It's like, I'm trying to think of a movie that like really might work by comparison. Let me think. I don't know. It's like watching, ages ago, there was a John Wayne movie. What was the name of it? Rooster Cogburn or something like that, I think it was, where he dies in the end. Okay. And nobody expected that to happen because this is John Wayne. That type of stuff. But for the sake of the story, it needed
to happen. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's the same type of thing. A few death threats, just
no
kidding.
big deal. Yeah. No, actually, you're probably not. I mean, haven't we all been there at some point?
Mm-hmm.
For various reasons.
That's sick.
Yeah. Here's my vow to you, though, because I want to become a Kraken head as well. I'm reading. Everybody knows how I love like The Descent, like subterranean creatures and all of that. Well, I had a listener, and I apologize if you're listening to this. I forget your name, or I would give you a shout out. But I got an email from this guy, and he's like, "If you like The Descent, check out the book The Awakening." And I forget the authors. Damn me. But anyway, it's called The Awakening. It's another book about subterranean creatures, and they're actually even more badass than the Hadals. But it's cool because the authors give a nod to Jeff Long and The Descent in the book, and I'm actually in their second book now, The Brink, and I think there's a third. But I have this fascination with subterranean creatures that just want to eviscerate you. But after I get done with their third one, I will start on yours because, damn it, it is time.
Thank you. Well, you got a lot to do. Two of them are on Audible.
Okay.
Shorter ones. So
when is the third one going to come out on Audible? I know everybody wants to know that. They're like, okay, well, where can we find it? All that good stuff.
Oh, no. I meant like the 2 short books. Like there's Cronus Rising, Plague, and Diablo.
Right.
Those are available on Audible. And those are only like, the one's a 50-page novel out, the other's like an 80 or 90-page book, like a novella. But those are available on Audible, like when you're driving and stuff. So, that lets you get in a little, I guess, reading time, so to speak, while you're doing the schlep back and forth, in the car or whatever, anything like that.
Yeah.
But the rest, I can get you some Kindle copies on the house. It's not a problem.
Oh, I'm not worried about that. I'm all for supporting all you guys. You guys work hard at what you do, and I appreciate that. So, no. Well, yeah, so since we're talking about the new one, though, reception is good, obviously. Is it just on Amazon, or are you on Barnes & Noble? Where can everybody get that?
No, I had to do an exclusive with Amazon. So, Barnes & Noble is carrying it, but they're getting it from Amazon also. So I have like an exclusive thing with them now, which has its advantages. I mean, they're the Godzilla of the publishing world nowadays.
Yeah.
So, you don't mess with Godzilla.
No, you really shouldn't. It's not a smart idea. Well, cool. Where did you want to start? Did you want to start with the Super Predator, or would you rather start with maybe some stuff in the sky?
Well, I really never got to talk about the UFO thing on your show before.
No, you haven't.
And, it wasn't like it was just such a quick little thing. It's not like something you could talk about for a whole show. It wasn't like I was, kidnapped by hot Amazonian babes from Venus and tied to a rack, and and then they took Sharpie markers and like drew all over me or something. Nothing so exciting.
Such a bummer.
I'm telling you.
That would have been a better story.
Yeah, but it was interesting because I sort of got like a little bit of confirmation on it. I thought that was the cat for a second.
I thought you fell out of your chair. Yeah, I was like, is it either Mace is in there or Max fell out of his chair?
Yeah, no, if it was the chair thing, it would have been thunderous. Picked with some colorful expletives, punctuating it.
Yeah, I would have left those in for sure.
Yeah, so the UFO thing. I mean, there's like two UFO stories. One is something I personally experienced, and the other is something that my ex-girlfriend from years ago told me about in detail. And I'll put that out there if you want it. Hers is like spectacular and like terrifying. Mine was more like, what the heck, But I was 24 years old, which is
5 years ago. Yeah.
Yes, last month. Yes.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I went down to Philadelphia to visit some family, and it was a weird time because this kid from the neighborhood, he was maybe my age or a little younger, had, like, everybody else was at like a wake. Apparently, I didn't know this was going on. He had killed himself with his father's service revolver. So that's how I remember the time. It was like September. Like early or late summer, I should say. Not early summer, early September, I mean. And I was standing out in front of the house in Southwest Philadelphia and looking up at the night sky. It was a very clear night and black up there. And you could see, like planes, and you could see their flashing lights, as they're going along, etc. And, I'm just like mulling over this whole incident or what. And then all of a sudden I see this one single white light. And the only reason I started watching it was that it was a full 3 times as fast as the planes that were up there. Now, your average jet, even in 1989, is still doing like 500 miles an hour or something like that, commercial jets. So, this thing was really hauling ASS, if you know what I'm saying. I mean, it had to be doing Mach 2, Mach 3, something like that. So I was looking at it because I thought it was a jet fighter. And of course, you're a guy, you're like, oh, a jet fighter. You don't see those very often in Southwest Philly. It didn't blink. It didn't have it wasn't like one of these navigation lights or whatever that the planes have. So I'm watching it, and it's searing across the sky. Wasn't really near other planes, a little higher up. And then it's going. And then all of a sudden, the strangest thing happened. It was like it ricocheted off a wall. It just was going, and then it just reversed direction with no stop. As it was just going this way, and then it was going the other way. No turn, no slowing down, no deceleration, nothing like that. Like a ping pong ball or a bullet just going, pew, and bouncing on something, going right back the way it came at the same speed. And I saw it, I was like, whoa. And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, well, that's impossible. Even today, for our technology, 3 decades later, that's impossible. The laws of centrifugal force, gravity, inertia, whatever you want to call it, planes can't do that. I mean, even we have ones that go that fast, but they can't, just change direction without stopping or slowing.
Right.
So I was on this Michael Hall show, and he had Peter Davenport from the National UFO Reporting Center was on there, and he had been talking about sightings before I, was interviewed, and they asked me to talk about this on the show. And I told them both, what had happened. And it wasn't like I was out there looking for UFOs. I literally I was watching this thing because I thought it was a jet fighter. But, and he said, well, Max, he goes, I listened to your story. He goes, and, ordinarily I would have, been like, I don't know about this, etc. He goes, but interestingly enough, I myself, in January of 1990, which was only like 4 months later, saw the exact same thing. And he explained to me that he was up, out there, he had a telescope up, but he was watching what he thought was a satellite falling out of orbit, coming down, and it did the same thing. It just reversed direction and went right back, like with no slowing, no anything like that.
Where was he when he saw his?
I don't know, honestly. I think it was like in the same, like, the same part of the country.
Yeah.
Or what? I don't know if it was Pennsylvania or not, but, it was only a 4 month difference. I mean, a ship like that could get anywhere at once, pretty quickly. But, he said that, the description was, and he hadn't told anyone about this. So not like I heard him discussing it and, whatever, he believed me also. But like I said, it's not a dramatic thing, but it definitely wasn't something of ours. It wasn't something from the Soviet Union, which I believe was still around back then. Maybe not. That kind of thing. But the the thing that my ex saw was like, and I mean, when she told me the story, she seemed very like afraid to talk about it, but she seemed very sincere. Like you could tell it was like a traumatic thing for her. And this was like a few years, maybe actually, no, probably about 2 years after what I saw. But she was from Puerto Rico, and she had been, obviously living in Puerto Rico. And her and I think she was like in her teens, so it was years before I saw. But when she told me, I'm sorry, I'm messing things up here. So basically, they had outside of their town, they have like an electrical facility, like the electric company kind of thing, generators and all that, and a large one for the town, the local city, whatever, and a whole bunch of people from her town, like hundreds of people, saw this. And according to her, it was at nighttime, and there was an immense UFO hovering over these electrical generators in the sky, like a few hundred feet up. She said it was gigantic, like the size of an aircraft carrier. It had lights on it, all this stuff, very illuminated, etc., eerie looking. And it was just, they didn't know what it was doing. I assumed it was, drawing power or something like that.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't like, but, she said they all watched it, they were all terrified, and then they go, they're told not to talk about it, et cetera. But, I didn't see it firsthand, but she seemed quite, serious about the story. Unfortunately, you're getting it secondhand.
Did she say who told them all not to talk about it?
Like local officials, police, that type of stuff.
Oh.
So, but they, she said there were hundreds of them, families were all there, and they were all terrified. Like they thought that, this thing was going to, start shooting people, or
sucking people
like
up in there,
havoc, or just start like laser blasting the entire region, or armies of little gray men were going to come out. I don't know, but it sounds very. I wish I'd seen it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no kidding. Size of an aircraft carrier just hovering there. Do you know how long they were able to watch it for?
She said it was there for some time.
Jeez.
Like, I don't know. She had told me back then, but this is, almost 3 decades ago. But, it was like they were watching it. Oh, and I think she said eventually it like lifted up and then it just went straight up.
Jeez.
She did tell me that part also. But they said it was huge. She described it as looking like a city. I'm sure it wasn't a city, but if you look like, like when I go on cruises, like on the Disney cruise lines, I mean, these ships are gigantic.
Yeah.
They're 1,300 feet long, 1,400 feet long. And you see one like from, 1,000, 2,000 feet away, and it does look like a city. So if you had something that big, I think she said it was oval shaped also. But if that, but like I said, it's been a long time.
That is interesting, though, and that was the first thing that came to my mind, too, when you mentioned, well, maybe it was drawing power, out of there. I mean, I don't know why else it would be hovering over generators like that. So that is, what a cool sighting. See, that's the kind of sighting that either you become obsessed with UFOs or you just never want to talk about it again, and you'd rather just never have had that happen to you,
Well, I've seen something that I do not want to talk about ever again.
Yes.
So, and we're not going to talk about it on the show.
No, we're not. At least not yet. That that's not. We'll see about that later.
I did see a hairy thing one time. Okay, and I hesitate to classify it as a Bigfoot. Although I read like in that area, like they had seen like there was like reports from decades earlier of a young like ape man or wild man or something like that. But I never told you about this actually. I think I mentioned it briefly on a Facebook post, and you were like, "Hawthorne, you're holding out on me."
Yeah, I remember that. All right, so you're gonna tell it now then, or what? You can't tease.
I might as well. I mean, I'm trying to think when this was. I think I was in my late 20s, like maybe 27 or 28 years old, which would go back about 27 or 28 years ago. My family used to have a big lake house up on Candlewood Lake in Connecticut, in Danbury. Beautiful area, really. I mean, like amazing. I wish we had never sold it, but anyway. So I would go up there a lot, especially in the spring, summer, and fall, to fish, and is one of my passions. And so connected to Candlewood Lake which is the big lake there. It's a huge lake. It's got 50 miles of coastline. I think it gets like 80 feet deep in places, etc. It's a big, and then it's part of a national park. There's what's called Squan's Pond, which is really part of Candlewood, which is connected to it, which is officially part of this state park. And Squan's is probably about a mile by 2 miles itself, something like that. Like the body where it's not, regularly shaped, but it's a big lake. And so I was out there super early one morning, and I think I was by myself. I think I'd been with one of my brothers or two of them, and they had wandered off into the woods to hike toward a different area of the lake where they wanted to fish. And I was trying to fish on what's called the causeway. And the causeway is like a highway, not a highway, but a road that is built up that separates Squan's from Candlewood. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of almost like a choke point. And there is, so it's made out of like stones, et cetera, and reinforced with, I don't know what's under it. And obviously there's asphalt, there's an actual road up on the top of it. And these large chunks of stone that form like these slopes on either side. And then there's, like under it, there is a means to go between the two bodies of water. So fish, muskrats, beavers, whatever, they can travel back and forth. I'm just like, giving you the lay of the land, okay? So it was pretty early, like 6 or 7 in the morning, and there was nobody else out there. I think it might have even been a work day, like a summer vacation type thing. But I remember it was early. It was also pretty misty out. I think it had rained recently. It was still pretty cloudy and overcast. Not whether that has anything to do with it or not, I don't know. But so I was sitting out on the stones that overlook Squan's, not the Candlewood side. And I had like a couple rods with me, and I had like 1 or 2 rods out there with like live shiners swimming around. And I was casting another rod, which is probably, I shouldn't have been doing maybe too many rods for one guy. Maybe I had 1 rod, that would be. And the other one I was casting a lure or something like that. Okay. So I'm doing my thing, and it was dead, nothing going on. And then I see something coming toward me in the water. I see it like bob up, and then I see it like disappear. And then like, 20, 30 yards, it comes up closer, and then it goes under again. And I'm seeing this thing, and then it looks fairly large to me. When I say fairly large, not like your usual freshwater fish size or something like that, So as it got closer, I saw something pop up, and I saw like something orangish and hairy. Okay. And I was like, I'm thinking, okay, is that a beaver? Because it was too big to be a muskrat. Muskrats are fairly small. I thought it was a beaver. And so I like stood up to get a better look at it. And at this point, I would say it was less than 100 feet away. Mind you, the water is kind of murky there. It's like got a lot of, it's almost like a tea color, at least at this point, maybe from the rain or what. And I see it near the surface, and I see like it's kind of long and orangish and hairy. And it was probably the size of a dog. I honestly thought at this point that it was an Irish setter. It was about that big. Okay. Irish setters with their reddish orange hair and all that. And then I see something round, which I think was the head. Okay. And then like it goes to dive under. And as it does, it had an elbow. And I saw this quite clearly because it broke the surface. Almost like when a person does like a crawl stroke and their arm comes up. Yeah. So I saw an upper arm, an elbow, and a forearm break the surface, and then it went under. And then I was like, what? And now I'm really looking, but it went down. The water's deep there, and it went down. It was headed straight for the passageway, whatever, that goes under the causeway there. And so I'm looking, but I couldn't see it, between the depth and the watercolor or whatever and everything. And I'm like, and it didn't surface. So then I was like, and I put my rod down, and I jumped up, and there was no cars, and I ran across the road. I went to the other side to see if it was going to appear on the other side, but it didn't show up. There was a lot of big lily pads and stuff on that side, on the left or whatever of that side of the causeway, but I didn't see it again. So I didn't really think anything of it. I was like, I just saw an elbow, a hairy arm, and stuff like that, and I never paid any mind to it. But yeah, when I had mentioned it, a year ago, whatever it was, I did Google it, and a long time back, they did have reports in Danbury of like, a hairy wild child or something like that. That was, people had seen lurking around that lake. So
interesting. Any happenstance on the color label for that one?
I don't think there was any description.
Yeah.
You know, I know what I saw. I mean,
Right.
you know, it was literally the color of an Irish setter. You know, but a little more orangey, a tiny bit. Well, some Irish setters are kind of orange.
I mean, did it look like a massive, you know, forearm and elbow as far as the distance from things?
It looked like the whole thing was probably 4 or 5 feet long from, you know, gauging from the distance. And its arm, and I'm going to say it was an arm because, I mean, I know what an elbow looks like, was, you know, about the size of mine. You know, it wasn't big. I mean, it wasn't a thin little twig.
Right.
Let's put it that way. But it wasn't like, my guns aren't as big as they used to be, but you know, sorry, I didn't take my pills. Didn't take my pills today. You know, I'm due.
Watch out, everyone! Max is on a tear.
I'm telling you. But yeah, it was the size of like a normal man's arm. I guess you could say, in terms of thickness. You know, like a swimmer's arm.
Yeah, real hairy though. I mean, real hairy.
Completely covered.
Huh.
Yeah, that's why, like I said, like it was the color of a beaver. A beaver has that reddish orange kind of, you know, color to it, you know, and that's why I thought it was a beaver. And I think what I thought was the beaver's body was its head, like that dome shape, like if it was the head was coming toward you, you know. But it was like, you know, it would swim underwater for a while, and then it would come up. I guess it was taking a breath, and it would go back under, and it would stay underwater predominantly. Like, you know, it didn't want to be on the surface, apparently, like, or that's its swimming technique. I don't know. You know, it would have been funny because I was toying with the idea of trying to hook it, like cast a lure and snag it, you know, and stuff. But, you know, at that point it went too deep and it was pretty far when it submerged. I could have probably got it with a cast, but I really wasn't thinking at that point. Can you imagine if I did?
Oh. Yeah. I don't think you'd really want to see what was on the other end after you hooked it, because I think it'd have been a little pissed off at you. That may have changed your life right there.
Yeah, well, I don't think it was a full grown. If it was a,
right.
You know, a Sasquatch, I don't think it was full grown. I think it was a child. You know, like a young adolescent, like an 8 or 10-year-old kid. You know, but you know, even one of those. I mean, a chimpanzee is 5 times as strong as a grown man. You would come walking up, say, "Come here." Pow!
Like, oh, really, so kid? You're gonna put that hook in me? I mean, come on, Max. You've never heard of the orangutans of Candlewood Lake before? I mean, come on.
It wasn't an orangutan. I could tell you that.
I don't think it was either. I was just messing with you.
It was just more, you know, like I said, it was kind of long, and I saw the head, like the dome shape, and I definitely saw the arm, the elbow part, you know, but. It's just like, it's one of those things where you see it, you're like, did I just see that?
Right. You're like,
you know, like did I, you know, have I been drinking? No. You know, yeah, I don't know. So I didn't even tell my brothers because, oh no, I did. I said the hairy red thing, and they thought I was an idiot. Yeah.
You did tell them, huh? And they just instantly went, "What the hell are you talking about?"
I was like, there's something in here, and I said it has an arm, like arms, like a person, like an elbow and all that, and they were like, sure there is. Yeah.
You're like, right. Okay, Max. Okay, buddy. Mm-hmm. You know what's cool, and it's a story that I bring up a lot, so I apologize to everybody if you've heard me say this like 15 times, but one of the coolest stories I've ever heard Will Jevning tell is a report that he got of a fisherman in a canoe or a boat or something, and he's out on a lake, I'm assuming, and I don't know how big the body of water is. I don't remember the details. I'd have to go. I should revisit that and tell the whole thing. But he saw a red Bigfoot passing under his boat, just full on like frog swimming, just getting after it under the water. And that was also a reddish colored hair on that thing too. So that's pretty cool.
There you go. I'm sure. I mean, yeah, this wasn't gigantic, you know, it wasn't big.
Yeah.
I would suspect with this lake being, I mean, this lake Swans has houses on one side of it, and then the other side has, you know, is federal land or whatever, and it just goes forever. So I don't think an adult Sasquatch would, you know, want to go swimming in this lake. I mean, you know, the chances of being something that big, you know, being seen are very likely. You know, so maybe a child might be more adventurous, shall we say? You know, but it was a good swimmer. I mean, it was able to stay underwater for prolonged periods of time and swim the whole time. If he says that his was swimming underwater, which is terrifying, you know, service on your boat. I mean, it's, you know, then it makes sense, but it was definitely that color. 100%.
So that was recent that you went back and looked in the area for other reports, and you saw like the wild child of Danbury or whatever it was.
Yeah, I Googled it.
Yeah.
Like I just looked up Bigfoot, like Danbury, Connecticut, that type of thing. And it came up, that they were like fishermen were reporting like, incidents with a hairy wild child that was seen, in the water or at the edges of the water and jumping, that type of stuff, playing in the water. So maybe the offspring do that, maybe when they're not supposed to be doing that. I don't know. It did pick a good time to do it because there was nobody on the lake. It was like right after dawn and miserable weather and, people would work or whatever. I wasn't.
Only your crazy butt was out there in the misty cold and first thing in the morning, right?
No, it wasn't cold. It wasn't cold. It was summertime.
All right.
But, yeah. But,
See, I listen. I listen really well. You know what? And was that wild child report was it a long time ago? Like 1900s?
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, because they'll usually put labels like that's what the papers like to do back then. The wild man, the wild child, they give them all these different kinds of names because they weren't utilizing things like Bigfoot and Sasquatch yet. So. Yeah,
that's why I was like reading it and I was like, well, is this a human they're talking about?
Right.
When they said a wild child. But yeah, that's what they said, hair covered, hairy wild child, this type of thing.
That's cool.
And so, I figured, that's when I started thinking about it. I'm like, maybe that was, there are towns around and stuff, but then again, there are parts in Pennsylvania not far from where I live that have had sightings. Hell, there's been 2 sightings of Dogman like 4 or 5 miles from my house.
From your house now?
Yeah.
Good luck with that, buddy.
Yeah, and then the descriptions of people very similar. These things like the springing ability. Like jumping like tremendous leaps and stuff. But and I was like, I was telling my wife, I said, listen, we should go hunting for one of these things. And she's like, yeah, right. It's not happening. I'm like, come on, it'll be fun. I am not going out in the woods with some, carnivorous, whatever, et cetera. Silver bullets notwithstanding. I'm like, I'm sure silver bullets won't be needed.
No, just get a 50 cal. We'll be fine.
Yeah.
And
I
mount
would
it on a
imagine
tank.
If those things are real, and I've never seen proof, but so many people report them, I would not imagine they're very friendly.
No, and that's the whole thing with the dogmen is they always seem pissed off and they don't care if people see them. So they're the complete opposite of what most of the Bigfoot tend to do. So, because Max, you're really level-headed and you're the first to say, here's what I think this is, and here's what I think it's not, and here's why this is BS. So honestly, what you saw in the lake, what else could that be? Honestly, what are some other options besides a red juvenile Bigfoot?
Like I said, at first, when I figured it wasn't a beaver and I saw it was longer, I thought it was an Irish setter because, it was that length, if you had the head, the tail, that type of stuff. But it wasn't that. It wasn't an otter. That would be utterly ridiculous.
You said you were going to do some dad jokes. I like it.
You say do dinosaur jokes, though, oh gosh, what do you get when you mix a Tyrannosaurus with a pig?
What?
Jurassic Pork.
A barbecuer's dream.
She's like, oh, we just lost 60% of our listeners. All right, get off.
Downloads were really down this week. I don't know what was going on.
Then there was another one. What do you call a dinosaur fart? My daughter hates this one. A blast from the past.
She doesn't like that one?
No, well, she thinks my dad jokes are horrible. I deliberately tell them because she thinks they're horrible.
You're embarrassing her.
Yeah, but no, I couldn't think of any creature native to this country, this continent, that would look like that. Like an orangutan would be the closest possible thing, and it definitely wasn't an orangutan. The arm wasn't overtly long or anything like that. Right. The size, and orangs can't swim like that. This thing was pretty good at swimming and concealing itself, and that type of stuff. So I don't know. Muskrats are little. They're the size of your forearm. Beavers are a little bit bigger. This wasn't a beaver. This thing's head was the size of a beaver's body almost, or something. And the fact that it had an arm, a forearm, an elbow, that's the part that, it's indefinable to me. I can't, classify it as anything, like there's nothing else that springs to mind. And like Spock says, in the absence of any other possibility, what is it? The impossible becomes possible or something.
No,
when you eliminate everything else.
Yeah, it's cool to hear you say that, because you're always one to say, no, this could be this or that, and we just don't know. And of course, we don't know for sure that it was a Bigfoot, but I appreciate you sharing that, because I once you said I gave you crap about that, I instantly remembered the story. I'm like, oh yeah, I wasn't even going to bring that up. I totally forgot about it, but I did give you crap about it on Facebook.
Well, yeah, I forgot about it myself, to be honest. It was so long ago,
Yeah.
It wasn't like a traumatic thing like fighting the alligator. Right. The alligator thing you don't forget because, it was a long, prolonged struggle and life or death and close encounter, and this thing's in your face and it's trying to eat you. And, that's not something that, goes away. Yeah. When you're sitting there fishing sucks. Oh, that was another thing. I couldn't get a bite.
Well, now you know why.
And Littlefoot ruined my day.
Yeah, Littlefoot is all up in your business. I mean, those poor fish. They're like, look, we already got all these freaking fishermen out here, and now we got damn big feetses in this lake too. Give me a break.
I tell you. Well, I don't know if you ever heard this incident, but when my nephew was 3, which is about, 13 years ago or 14 years ago, something like that. We took him for his first ever fishing trip when I still lived in New Jersey, and it was like a local pond off the road out there. And this was it wasn't a glamorous pond. It was like 5 acres or whatever. But we, eventually I found it was a great place to fish. I mean, you could catch everything from carp to 12-pound channel cats to 45-pound snapping turtles in this place. But so we pulled up in a parking lot on the opposite side, and we had to walk through a long grass field to get to the edge of the pond. And it was the first time there. And I remember my nephew, he had a cast on his leg, so his mom had tied like a plastic bag around it to protect him or something like that. And so it was me, him, and his father. And we get there, and we walk across this, I'm talking 300-400 foot grass field to get to the edge of this thing. And we're looking at the pond. We're going to survey get the lay of the land before we set up shop. And as soon as we get there, and it's 100 degrees out that day. It was in July. Literally 100. It was hot. Okay. And I see something move out of the corner of my eye. And I look down the embankment of the pond. And the 5 acres, it was probably, let's say, 200 by 1,000 feet, this body of water, regular shape. And on the embankment, all of a sudden, there was this gigantic lizard. And I saw it plain as day. Okay. The lizard was as big as me. I'm not kidding.
What?
A monitor lizard, yes. And it was lying there in the sun, enjoying the 100-degree temperatures. And it was dark colored, so it was heating up. Okay. And it gets up like it was like pissed that we showed up and we were interrupting it. Because nobody probably ever shows up there. And it was like, ugh. And it got up all annoyed looking. And it does that monitor lizard saunter down to the water, big belly, well fed. You could see it. It was eating well from this place. Long tail. I mean, the whole thing might have been 7 feet long. And it just slips right into the water, swims off, disappears underwater, and it's gone.
Wow.
So I'm staring at it, and I'm like, and then I turn to my brother, the lawyer, and I say, did you see that? Because I thought I was an idiot, right? And he goes, what did you see? Like that, like I'm on the stand, And I'm like, a big freaking lizard. And he goes, right? And he's like, what was that, an alligator? I'm like, it wasn't an alligator. It looked more like a monitor. He goes, yeah, like a Komodo dragon or something. I'm like, exactly, And he's like, wow. I'm like, it must have been somebody's pet and it escaped and it lives here or whatever, And then the weird part was, the stupid part is he goes, all right, he goes, we'll leave, we'll leave his son there. You and I go get the chairs and the rods and all that stuff. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, we just saw a gigantic carnivorous lizard go right there in that water. And you're going to leave your 3-year-old kid standing here at the edge of the water? And he goes, you're right. I'll stay here. You get the stuff. I mean, like, super dad. Yeah, right. Yeah.
And he's a lawyer. Come on now.
Can you imagine?
Goodness me. I mean, the size of you're going, did we just walk into Jurassic Park? Like, what the hell is this?
I thought I was losing my mind. That's why I needed to make sure he saw it too, Like,
can you imagine what that thing is having to eat, though?
Well, I mean, when I fished the other side, and we never saw it again, But then again, we didn't fish that side. We found a much better spot on the other side with shade and trees and a parking lot right there. I mean, you only had to walk 50 feet.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there were 10, 12-pound carp in there. There were, like I said, big catfish, tons of smaller fish, bass, crappies. I mean, it was stocked with stuff. And then there were giant snappers, regular sized turtles, ducks, geese. One time I did see a duck get snatched and scream and get pulled under and disappeared. But I thought
now
it's
you know what it is.
Yeah. But this thing was, I mean, I'm telling you, it was well fit. It had a belly that was hanging down, like me after leaving the Chinese buffet or something.
Hey, that's how we're all supposed to look after leaving that. Do you think something like that is a better predator, catching his food on land or in the water, or both?
Well, I believe it was a water monitor, which is a very large monitor lizard, carnivorous. They're adept, at both. So, I mean, this thing could, sneak through the grass and grab a duck or a goose and drag it down, But in the water, he would be in his element. I mean, they could just creep along, pretend he was a log, fish goes, wham, grabs it.
Obviously, that you already mentioned that it had snapping turtles in there, like before we even saw this thing. So, obviously, probably no swimming in that lake then, right?
It's not a lake and it's nasty. You would not want to go in this one.
Yeah.
It's like water you find a body in or something.
Maybe that's what he was eating on.
I don't
People
know.
just dumping their murder victims in there, and he can take care of them for them. Goodness. Well, that's a cool story. I hadn't heard that one either. Yeah, we were talking about Jurassic Park earlier. Now I'm like, hey, you were at Jurassic Park. Well, I bet for a second you're like, what in the? I've never seen a lizard that big ever.
I've seen them in zoos, but not firsthand wandering New Jersey. Right. I mean, this thing is from, I don't know where they're from, South America or Africa. It was far from home. Okay, he did not belong there.
Probably just the Jersey Devil after he got his wings clipped. That's all that was. We can explain it with another mystery. I'm pretty sure.
That thing would have eaten the Jersey Devil.
Yeah.
I mean,
little goat head or something on it, real freaky. Then you just never want to get in the outdoors again. Really get screwed up. It blew my mind. That's a cool story.
Yeah, just like, you're just walking along and hey, you're 16,000 miles from home, but nice to see
but he's doing well. I wonder how old he was when you saw him.
I don't know, but if it's still alive, it must be gigantic.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Is that body of water still there?
Yep. I haven't been there. I mean, I haven't been there myself in 10 years, so I'm going to guess.
You need to go dip your toes in, see if something, takes a little.
Well, I could go there with a big cut bait or something.
Yeah,
but I know the snappers will show up and start tearing at it pretty quick. But if that thing's in there, with a heavy line, I mean, I could haul him in, kicking and screaming. I just need like a couple people with gloves. We'd have to grab him and tackle him and, duct tape his mouth shut, duct tape his talons and
he'd probably come right at you.
Yeah, they're all weapon. I mean, every part of them is a weapon.
Yeah. So. Especially at that size. The dude could just tack you and be like, what's up, buddy? I mean, you're not going to be able to handle me. Especially, like you said, if you were by yourself, forget it.
Yeah, you do. It's so a lot of times, I think a lot of these lake monster sightings, not a lot, but sometimes, you get things that people had as pets and they just, either they escaped or people just dumped them.
Yeah.
And the animal was just trying to survive. And sometimes in certain environments, they can thrive. They're like the apex predator all of a sudden in that ecosystem. There's no competition. Nothing's going to mess with them. Then they're just going to do their thing and grow and wish they had a mate and, try and date like a goose instead or I don't know what.
So some identity crisis going on there?
Yeah, something like that, Any port in a storm, that kind of thing.
So, before we get to the monster turtle, would you really want to encounter a dog man? I mean, is that something that's kind of on your radar now?
I would be heavily armed. Okay. Yeah. I would expect a creature like that probably preys on people, like all the people, like in the Missing 411 books and stuff. And honestly, if I felt threatened, I would shoot it without hesitation, and not just once. And I would try and put it down and make sure it was staying down. So, but I would not go alone. I would go with a party that was experienced and heavily armed and prepared for just such an eventuality. Because, maybe there's more than one, Sasquatch are notorious for, you shoot one, not that I would advocate shooting a Bigfoot, but, all of a sudden his father's like right next to you and you're missing a head.
Yeah.
So there have actually been reports like that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so, but you know, this is not a possibly passive creature. If this thing is like an apex predator that views like, oh, you're in my territory, guess what? You're on the menu. You know, then you've got to defend yourself, and you want to do so as effectively as possible, because I've read reports, and I mean, these things are supposed to be what, 7, like Sasquatch size, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, if I've got some 7 or 8 foot tall lycanthrope looking thing coming at me that weighs 500 or 800 pounds, you know, I'm going to defend myself to the best of my ability, and you know, drag him home and call my taxidermist.
Yeah, and get some offshore accounts, because you're going to be making some money off that.
Can you imagine a taxidermist getting that call? I mean, like, I know George Dante, like he's a national champ. He does like the museums and stuff, you know. I'd be like, George,
that's the guy to call. Yeah.
Back home, you got a taxidermy man. You're going to have a heart attack when you see what I bring him. You know, that kind of stuff. Like,
Really,
George,
though,
I got something in the truck.
Could you imagine? I mean, bringing in pretty much an entire creature like that, and I don't know. Sometimes I do have a little bit more of a difficult time with the dog man, the woof man, you know, because I can't say the L properly, so I just say woof man. I don't know. But when you talk to people, and I have, and they admit that it changes their life, and you can hear it in their voice, and they swear up and down. They're like, yep, I saw it, and nope, I sure as hell don't want to see it again. It's straight from hell, you know, like these things are just... And
they attack people, don't they?
Yeah,
I mean, I've read that
they're very aggressive.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, we're not talking about something like a hominid, like a Sasquatch, where
you're peeking at you or something from a tree. No, they're coming at you.
Yeah. I mean, this is like a hungry lion or something like that. You know, you're just viewed as, you know, there's not going to be communication there. You know, you're just a fat, juicy, right. Yellow, white-tailed deer wearing, you know, jeans and a sweatshirt. You know.
Speaking of barbecue, you know, you were talking about that earlier. It's like you're out there, you know, hitting a tree or something, trying to, like you said, communicate with a Bigfoot. And like you said, the next thing you know, you're headless, you know, or armless, and he's beating you with your own arm or something, you know, because a dog man showed up instead. So they just don't give a crap if you see him. That is kind of the MO of these things, whereas Bigfoot's kind of like, oh, you're an interesting little show. I'm going to watch you from over here, which most of the time, many of us that even talk about this that have never seen one and want to may have been being watched at some point by a Bigfoot. I mean, that's even a stretch in and of itself, but it's not impossible. So, you know, it's more a voyeuristic thing for a Bigfoot, whereas these other guys, like you said, a lycanthrope, freaking werewolf-looking thing, they're like, hey, you're in my woods. Guess what? Gonna get your butt beat now. So, or at least terrified, and then you get run out of the woods. So, I don't know.
Well, you know, the question is do the people that, you know, don't make it back that ran into this thing, or are they some of those people that have disappeared in all these parks and forests, etc.? Right. You know, I mean, where are the bodies? Where, you know, like I read David Paulides' book, you know, Missing 411 Hunters, and it's frightening.
Have you watched the Hunted on?
Not yet.
Yeah, you need to watch that. It's good.
Yeah.
I just finished that the other night. I finally got to watch that, and it is very good. It is on Prime Video.
It's a horrifying prospect, though. I mean, if you think about it, like 3 men walking through the woods, experienced woodsmen armed with, you know, high-powered rifles, okay, walking along, conversing, you know, A, B, C, and all of a sudden they're talking, and then they go to see something. You know, the last guy, and you know, 2 seconds ago he had said something, and they turn, and he's gone.
Yeah.
Like, how does that happen? What can grab a grown man? He's unable to respond, to utter a cry for help even, and snatch him and his gun up, and he just disappears. What is physically capable of doing that?
Yeah, and then the fact that, you know, it's one thing, and we all know how it goes. The forest does take care of you know, decomposition. Everything goes quickly. Clothes obviously get left behind longer, but when things like, you know, most hunters will carry, you know, they'll have a couple weapons, or they'll have their rifle plus, you know, a knife, a boot knife or something. But somehow all of that stuff goes missing. So, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like something is not just dangerous, but big and powerful and intelligent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stealthy.
Yeah, so good luck with those dogmen 4 or 5 miles from your house.
Yeah, well, they're only supposed to be 5 feet tall from both reports.
Oh, well, those sissies. You could take those guys.
Imagine I grab one, I wrestle and put him in like a sleeper hold, and stuff. Throw him in the trunk.
I don't think that your cats will like that. Bringing the new pet home. I think that
I wasn't planning on bringing it as a pet. I just, like I put it on eBay. One live werewolf.
What's the price tag on that? You think? What would the bidding start at?
50,000.
That's it.
Well, I mean, we got to start somewhere.
Start low.
Live video feed.
How much would you pay for a cup of Dogman drool, starting at $10? Yeah.
Ugh.
Delicious. All right. Well, let's say we jump into a little bit of what you're known for. We talked about a little bit of water creatures, but let's talk a little bit about this super predator.
Well, this is my personal theory on it. A lot of people know about the super predator thing from years back. Gosh, I don't know, it's like 3-4 years ago or something like that. Reports came out of a 3 meter, so 9 or 10 foot great white shark from the Bremer Canyon in Australia, and how evidence had surfaced that this shark, which had a satellite tag on it, had been the tag washed up on shore earlier than it was supposed to, and it was acid etched as if it had been in something's stomach. And when they checked the satellite data on it, they saw that weeks earlier, or whatever it was, that the shark had been swimming normally, normal ranges and stuff up and down in the water column and stuff. And then at one point, it made like a sudden, desperate dive, and it went down like, I think 1,800 plus feet. And then it just stopped, and it had temperature sensors built into the satellite tracker. And the temperature of the tracker at that time was the temperature of the surrounding water, which was also the shark's skin temperature, which was 46 degrees, to be exact. So the temperature jumped in seconds from 46 to 78 degrees. And it stayed there for the next 8 days. Okay, so that told them right away that something had chased the shark, probably, and swallowed the shark whole. And it had now the tracker and the shark, being digested in its stomach, its digestive system. At which point then the tracker was excreted, obviously, and then it bobbed to the surface and eventually washed up on shore where it was found, and all this stuff started. So there was a couple of documentaries about the super predator and what they thought it was. When it first happened, that the word got out, it went viral very quickly about this shark or something eating it. And then its first documentary got churned out real quick. I personally, being a, quote, conspiracy theorist, okay, that's 2 words that people like to use to try and make you look like an idiot.
Yeah.
Or if so, nobody wants to listen to you. But I think that, having seen the documentary, I think it was rushed out to quell the rising panic. I think it was, can I say bullshit on the air?
Absolutely, you can.
Even though I just said good, I think it was total bullshit, okay? Because what they were trying to say was that the shark was 9 or 10 feet, and 3 meters is almost 10 feet. But a 16-foot great white shark somehow was able to kill and eat the shark. Now, if you put a 10-foot and a 16-foot fish side by side, sharks, you can see that shark is not eating the other shark.
Right.
At least not whole, okay? That's the first thing. The second thing is that a great white shark, 16 feet long, would not be as fast or as agile as a 9 or 10 footer. And I don't think in a chase he'd be able to catch him. Okay, that's the second thing. The third thing is that the tracker showed that once the shark was consumed, the tracker's behavior changed. Instead of going in swimming patterns familiar with a great white, or appropriate for a great white, it started behaving in a manner similar to that of a killer whale. And it ranged from the surface down to 300 feet, up, down, that type of stuff. And did that for the next 8 days until it came out the other end. Okay, so that is an air breather that's doing that, not another shark, which further makes the notion of a 16-foot great white killing shark alpha, as she was called, even more inane. But then there's the digestive thing. It took 8 days for it to be digested. And a white shark's digestive system takes like 24 hours, 36, I think at most. This thing took 8 days to digest, which is a long, slow process. Okay, so that doesn't match. And then last but not least, you got the body temperature. And the body temperature was 78 degrees in the stomach. Now, if you look up a elasmobranchiologist's website, you will see that a great white shark's body temperature can be warmer than the surrounding water, okay, because it's generates some body heat. Okay, it's not really warm-blooded per se, but parts of it generate heat. And the warmest part is the stomach, which can be a maximum, this is per the professionals, of 25 degrees higher than the surrounding water. And doesn't stay at that temperature, mind you. Okay, it varies depending on where the shark is, you know. But this, so that would mean that it would be a maximum of 71 degrees in a great white stomach. Okay, this thing was 78 and it stayed steady for 8 days. So we know it's not a shark. But to prove it on this documentary, they want to get this temperature showing 78 degrees. So they have a 16-foot great white coming up near the surface. And the guy's got a handheld, I don't know what you call it, you know, like one of those thermal
the
scanners.
laser thing, yeah.
You know, and I'm assuming these things are able to take temperature from a distance. Okay, like you know, like a thermal scanner or something like that. But somehow, the shark's back just breaks the surface of the cold water. Let me restate that: the shark's cold water covered back just breaks the surface of the water, and he points and squeezes this thing, and somehow, at an angle, he's able to tell that its stomach, which is several feet underwater, is 78 degrees.
Really?
Yes, I swear to God. And even the guy that was in the show at the end said, well, I'm not really fully satisfied with this and that. I think he was pressured into like going along with this, you know.
Right.
Then they put out a second one where they said it was a megalodon shark, and that was even more hokey, whatever, in my opinion. Okay. But I believe that the super predator is actually a reptile, a marine reptile of sorts, because all this evidence points in that direction. I mean, the first thing is that the only reptile, though, that matches, which obviously is not a selection, is the leatherback sea turtle. And a leatherback sea turtle, I just bring this up because it is capable of temperature differentials of 32 degrees higher than the surrounding water. It's always active and it maintains its temperature. Well, 32 degrees added to shark alpha's temperature of 46 gives the super predator's 78 degree temperature.
Ba-bang.
Exactly. But leatherbacks don't eat sharks, nor could a leatherback catch and kill and eat a 9 or 10 foot great white. It might be the other way around. Right. Okay. Leatherbacks are fast. They swim at 22 miles an hour, but you would need something much, much bigger to do this. Another interesting thing about the leatherback is its digestive system is 6 times longer than other species of sea turtles, which suggests, you know, kind of goes in line with the idea that it took 8 days for the shark to be digested. Okay. So, and it's an air breather, you know, so that makes sense as well. So all this stuff kind of points in the direction of a leatherback or something very similar to it. And interestingly enough, back in 1969, if I'm not mistaken, it's been a long time since I you know, worked on this thing, etc. But there was a gentleman named Gary LaMotta who, let me find some of the details because I want to go down here if I can pull this up. So sorry.
No, you're fine.
Let's see. Okay, so 1969, Gary LaMotta, he's out fishing, and he spots a gigantic turtle sort of frolicking on the surface near his boat. This is out of Vancouver Island in British Columbia. And the turtle is enormous. It sticks its head and neck up out of the water, looks at him, and just the head and neck is 8 feet long. Now, that's a giant turtle. Okay. He described it as not having a shell. So sort of like a leatherback, I guess. You know, he said it was, I think the body was like 6 feet thick or something like that. And it had flippers. And eventually when it took off, it was capable, as he put it, of tremendous speed. So it was fast. You can see in the film, he filmed it with a Super 8 camera back then. And you could see just it's this dark thing bobbing up and down out of the surface, et cetera. And it's hard to see what it is. You can see like water, and you can see like looks like a storm front of it that can move out, which I find interesting.
Yeah.
So what I did was I took a couple of frames from the footage and I enhanced them. And when I did, I was looking at the face of the turtle. You can see it. And if people go on my blog post and they look up like Gary LaMotta sea turtle or super predator on the Cronus Rising website, you'll find this thing, and you could see that when you enhance it, and this is very old, deteriorated Super 8 stuff, but it doesn't matter. You can see the eyes. You can see this thick ridge of skin under the eyes, bags under its eyes there. You can see the beak shape, the jaw, and you can see thick ridges of skin underneath on its throat. All this is sticking up out of the water. So Gary, in my opinion, legitimately filmed it. He said this animal was 38 feet long, by the way, which is, big enough to catch, chase down, and eat a 9-foot great white shark. I mean, it's a big animal, okay? So Gary pretty much proved that this creature exists, and there's a lot of other sightings out there that match this type of animal and this behavior, where sea monsters reported head and neck coming up, and they're looking, at people and stuff like that. And I don't think they're looking because they're curious. I don't think they're looking because you're like, oh, if you were in the water, you'd be the right size to eat, and you don't want to jump in the water with this thing, right? This thing is a piscivore, most likely. It eats fish. It's an active predator, and it's big enough that it doesn't need a shell per se, like a protective shell like a green turtle has, or a loggerhead or something like that, because once you get to be 30, 40 feet long or more, there's sharks aren't going to mess with you unless you're like dying or something like that. It probably doesn't have much in the way of natural enemies except for maybe orcas or something like that. So, this is my opinion. I believe this is what the super predator is. And all the data kind of goes with that. We're looking for an immense, fast-moving, carnivorous reptile, and this fits the bill. Oh, and there is one last thing. On one of the documentaries, when they were out looking for the super predator, they documented a sonar hit deep under them. They're hundreds of feet down. That was, I believe they said 11 meters long, like 35, 36 feet or something like that. So it was swimming slowly, and they just dismissed it and said, oh, it's probably a whale. But I don't think it was. I mean, think about sea turtles. When they're swimming, if they're not in a hurry, they don't move very fast.
No.
And I think that this thing in the Bremer Canyon, I think that's part of its hunting territory. I think they had it on sonar, and they just dismissed it as being a cetacean. And, I think they were wrong. I think that that's what it is, personally. So
I know that you keep your finger on the pulse of these stories that come in, and sometimes the photos just happen to, go viral or finally come out, and it's not a new event or a new photo. But have you seen any carcasses that there's any indication that it is one of these larger marine reptiles that you were just speaking about?
There's one, you got to keep something in mind, okay? Like reptiles don't float typically when they die. Like I've seen a very, very large sea turtle floating dead, belly up. I mean, much bigger than the world record for a loggerhead. This thing was, I would say the shell was at least 6 feet long.
Jeez.
Yeah, and close to a yard thick, the body. It was immense. I mean, the size of like a Volkswagen Beetle. Dead, floating belly up. Must have been hit by a boat or a ship or I don't know what. But and it was a fresh carcass. There was no sharks tearing at it or anything like that. But a lot of reptiles that aren't turtles like that, if people ask like about mosasaurs or things like that, if they were still alive, a lot of these reptiles, plesiosaurs, are known for ingesting stones, rocks. They call them gastroliths. Okay. It may help digestion, but most importantly, it's for buoyancy. And that's because when you have air inside your lungs, your tendency is to bob up to the surface. So these animals swallow stomach stones or gastroliths to help them sink. Without air, they sink. Even with air, they have to maintain buoyancy by swimming actively. Right. So if you are most reptiles, if you have the cats, but if you have an animal like that ingests stomach stones, and crocodiles do. If you shoot a crocodile, they say you got to get it right away, or it's going to sink and you're going to lose the carcass. For hunters. But So, these things, when they die, they're not going to float on the surface like a whale does. They're just going to sink and get, scavenged by sharks, and hagfish going to hit the bottom and whatever else is down there. So, the odds of something like that, coming are much, much slimmer to begin with. But there is a weird carcass from the Philippines, and I have a bunch of photos for it. I might put them on my Monsters and Marine Mysteries group on Facebook. Somebody sent me a bunch of them a couple years back, and I don't know who they are. The person was, and I can't contact them, so I can't publish them in a book or anything like that. But there was one carcass from the Philippines, and everybody's dismissed it as a whale, like a gray whale, etc. But if you look at it, it doesn't match. You can see this thing's head, and you can see its one nostril, which means there's one on the other side. And the eye is very large, much bigger than any whale. And the head shape and the nostril, it's just not, in my opinion, a cetacean. Even if the carcass is as rotten as it is, and flesh is moving around, you can see this thing's skull in the shape of the head, and you can see the eye. It does not look like a cetacean that I'm familiar with. Eye size alone. The eyes are like the size of a human head. Okay, that's
gosh.
like giant squid size eyes,
right?
But in some sort of mammal or reptile or whatever, But so if it was there in the Philippines, it drifted into the shallows. It was disgusting. They dragged it out of the sea and they got rid of it. I don't know if they saved samples or what, but it's it doesn't look like a whale to me. But if you don't have the body, what are you going to do?
Right.
Over there they think sea monsters are real, and to them, oh, it's a sea monster. We'll take it out and blow up the body or sink it or get rid of it.
Like, here's another one, guys. Take a couple snaps and off it goes.
Yeah, I did have some guy try and call me up and con me about it because he'd seen the investigation I did for the Carnival Cruise Monster. When we talked about that, and this guy was in the Philippines, and he was telling me that the carcass ended up initially in front of his house. He has a house on the beach, and it was there. And he said he had scuba gear, and he said that it had like ropes on it or whatever. It had been he was telling me that he swam up to it. It had 4 flippers. One was missing. One had been bitten off. Okay. And it had teeth in the upper and lower jaw, sharp teeth. Okay. The head is sort of shaped like, from the photos, it sort of looks like almost like a caiman lizard without the scales.
Yeah.
That would be a good analogy though. That kind of shape, large eye, obviously closed, but the skin is smoother than that. And, but anyway, so this is what he was telling me. Okay. And then he was telling this whole story about how, they put ropes on at this point, and they dragged it ashore. The soldiers came, and they used like forklifts and stuff, or construction stuff like backhoes, whatever, and they put it into a truck, and they took the entire body and all the scraps, and it fell apart as they were roping it and stuff, and they took it away to dispose of it. So like the Big Brother thing, going to hide it. Now, normally, I would think that might be possible, but unfortunately for him. The next day, somebody sent me all these photos. And I was like, really? I said, so when you first saw it, there were no ropes on it, right? And then he goes, no, they put ropes on it. And then the body, as they're dragging it, started to fall apart. I'm like, I see. And then it was taken by trucks. And he's like, yeah. I said, so why is it? And I started sending him the photos. I have these photos. And you can see that they have ropes tied around it now, and they're dragging it out to sea. And you can see them, the fishermen or whatever, they've been hired, and they're doing this. I don't see any trucks, but I do see them dragging it out to sea and stuff. And then he was like, oh, where did you get these photos from? Oh, it's like from your mom.
It was amphibious trucks, Max, obviously. Come on. Yeah. But,
so he got caught trying to tell commit a hoax on you. I hate hoaxers. Okay. I hate hoaxers with a passion. So, anyway, but yeah, so, I don't know if the thing had teeth, it didn't have teeth, or there were flippers, there weren't flippers. You really can't tell on the photos because it's on the surface and part of it is submerged. But the head shape is very unusual. In fact, I know a guy who is a specialist with whales, including fossil whales, and so Simon Francis Shelley. And I told him I'm going to post this thing on my cryptid group, and I want you to look at it, because I showed them to a top marine biologist, And he said, I don't know what that is.
Mm.
He said, my knee-jerk reaction is to say it's a whale. He goes, but I can't definitively say, or could I tell you what kind of whale? I said, it's, he goes, I'll be curious to see what, this paleontologist has to say. And I haven't done it yet, but, I'd like to see what he thinks because, it's a bit of a mystery,
I mean, really, who knows what's down there? And that is spectacular with kind of all the bullet points of, you got the temp, you got the air breather, the digestion. That was a cool part of that story. I always like that as far as how long it takes for things to go through a system. Well, it's not a great white. I love that story. Do you know where Gary was fishing there? Do you know at what depth, that area would have been? How deep is that area?
I don't. I know that they were coming out of Q channel. I would imagine it's fairly deep.
Mm-hmm.
You could see the shore in the distance, but it's. I think that what happened is like when you have a high pressure front from a storm, incoming, outgoing, whatever, it tends to make fish move. It herds them like bait fish and stuff, whether they're uncomfortable or what, And I know lakes where like a high pressure front is coming, and I know all the bait fish are going to bunch up in one end of the lake, and I can go there, and all the predators are there. The big muskies, muskellunge, things like that. And it's a feeding frenzy. The chances of getting a hookup are 10 times greater. So I think it's probably the same sort of thing. Like this animal normally is pretty secretive, but its food moved temporarily, and it moved with it. Yeah. And, it was just there. I think it was probably herding fish and eating fish. And then it was looking at him saying, you're going to do a little skinny dipping?
God, yeah. Can you imagine being in the water with something like that? They really need to redo Jaws, and it's like da-da, 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 da-da. And then all of a sudden, the head comes up, and it's just an 8 foot long head of a leatherback turtle. You're like, what the hell? Still terrifying.
Horrible way to die, I got to tell you. Because, you'd be eaten alive and whole. Yeah. So you'd be chomping you, but you get down, down, down. You'd be like, you wouldn't bleed to death before you got eaten or anything like that. It would just be awful.
I totally agree with that. I would rather take the great white because it'd be more like being not literally gummed to death, but compared to a great white, it would be like being gummed to death. I mean, it would be a much quicker death, I think, for the great whites. Yeah,
if you had scuba gear on, it'd be worse. You'd be alive until your air supply ran out, maybe.
Yeah, you're just intact in your suit, just getting just bones broken, and just slowly running out of air. That would be horrifying. Surely there's been victims of things like that. I mean, my goodness, terrible.
Well, there's a lot of disappearances, a lot of sea serpent sightings. I've looked into that. It sounds like the same animal, not the exact same animal, but the same species. Right. And if you start to look at these things, they start to make sense after a while when they add up. I mean, there's so many. I'm gonna see if I can pull one up for you right now. Hold on.
I mean, they got to have girlfriends and boyfriends and husbands and wives. I mean, they have to be breeding, right? So, it's just like the Bigfoot. They're like, oh, you mean there's more? Well, yeah, they gotta, they have to procreate. There's just not one Bigfoot up in the Pacific Northwest walking around,
Well, there's a little one in Canada Lake, apparently.
Sure is.
Here, this is something right here. So this is from, I'm not sure which, it's from that very old book, but 1877. It's obviously a long time ago. The Royal Yacht Osborne, docked in Gibraltar, encounters a similar, even larger turtle. One of the witnesses, Lieutenant William Haynes, reported, and this is a direct quote, I distinctly saw a head, 2 flappers, and about 30 feet of an animal's shoulder. The head, as nearly as I could judge, was about 6 feet thick. The neck, narrower, about 4 to 5 feet. And if you look in the footage, this matches proportion-wise. The shoulder about 15 feet across, and the flappers each about 15 feet in length. Jeez. The movements of the flappers were those of a turtle, and the animal resembled a huge seal, the resemblance being strongest about the back of the head. I could not see the length of the head, but from its crown or top to just below the shoulder, where it became immersed, I should reckon about 50 feet. The tail end I did not see being underwater. God. So it's like, there's multiple reports of this stuff. And when he describes it as being like a huge seal, that goes with the idea, what Gary said about it was shellless. Right. So, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, they've discovered that recently that mosasaurs may have actually laid eggs in the water, eggs that hatched in the water.
Really?
So yeah, they found a fossil one, and so that the egg is more like flexible and gel-like or something. When it comes out, the thing hatches.
Wow.
So they didn't have to come ashore to lay eggs, and they didn't give birth purely to live young. So if this creature had the similar adaptations, because it wouldn't be able to come ashore. I mean, a 38-foot turtle would weigh as much as a gray whale. Gravity is, it would have a very hard time.
It wouldn't have been his friend, no, had he come ashore.
Yeah, but it would be spotted. But it must be able to give birth the same way, or it does the other thing where it has like an anaconda. It has the eggs in its body.
Right.
It keeps the eggs inside, and they hatch internally, and then they're born alive. And either way, there's. I mean, Gary's footage is Gary's footage. It's real. It's definitely a turtle, and if his description of the size and everything matches, then we've got there's a gigantic carnivorous turtle swimming around.
I mean, that's freaking massive. That would be so cool to see, but really terrifying. I mean, you guys need to just think about the dimensions of that. That is insane.
Well, I mean, just the head, 8-foot head and neck, it would have to be like 4 feet thick.
Yeah.
Well, I guess. I mean, it's got the beak. Just like this thing, and it's a fast swimmer. So, the interesting thing about Shark Alpha is, and they didn't mention this in the show. I guess they didn't notice it, or they didn't want to talk about it. But she was chased more than once by this predator, because if you look at the tracking thing, I took a still from the show, and there are actually 3 incidents on there where she was chased multiple times before she was killed. You see the tracker, and then it goes deep, 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 deep. And then another one, like days later, deep, 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 and then another one. And I think that she tried to escape this thing by diving into deep water, and the 3rd or 4th time, it just didn't work. Because the turtle, whatever it was, let's put it that way, like when great whites are attacked by orcas, this is their escape route. Like they had an incident in the Farallon Islands years ago, where killer whales, a mother demonstrating to her baby or something like that, killed a great white, ripped it apart. She taught the small one how to do it, the calf, rip it open, eat its liver, this type of stuff. Okay? Mama knows best. When this happened, every great white shark in the Farallon Islands dove to 1,500 feet and swam to Hawaii. Wow. From California to Hawaii. Yeah. And they didn't come back for a long time. So it's like they're able to sense or smell when one of their kind is killed. See? And that trick of diving deep that's deeper than a killer whale can function. Killer whales don't go that far down into the abyss. See,
that's so amazing, the adaptations these creatures have for something like that. I mean, because other than that, they don't have a lot of problems unless they come up, to a massive prop of a boat or something. So for them to be able to dive that deep to get specifically away from those things is amazing. Yeah,
so that was what Alpha tried to do. When this thing came after her, her instincts, as if a killer whale was coming after her. So she dove. She figures, air breather is after me. I'm going to go where it can't go. Unfortunately for her, it could go. Yeah. See? And the 3rd time was the charm, and she got caught. And
she tried her damnedest, though.
Yeah.
Put up a good fight. I'm sure she was like, wait, what the hell are you? I thought I had you figured out, but I don't.
Well, you can imagine, I mean, if you're a white shark, and they said she was a very aggressive white shark to begin with. That's why they call her Alpha. She's super confident, et cetera. She's swimming along and she sees this turtle coming toward her. She probably doesn't realize it's a problem until it keeps getting bigger and bigger. Right. She's like, wait, what?
Yeah. You're
what?
Still there?
Then,
yeah.
Like it. I had that actually in the scene from Cronus Rise in the first book, where at the end when the baby pliosaurs hatch, and there's one of them down on the beach there, and this there's an old seagull up there that was waiting for baby turtles to hatch so it could feast on them. So that because the pliosaurus has the same 4 flippers, the bird thinks it's a baby turtle, and she dive bombs it, and then as she's coming down at the last second, she's like, wait, is she closer? Is it bigger? And she pulls out her wings, tries to break, but it's too late. It jumps up, snatches her out of the air, and eats her. So, but the same thing could happen to a shark, I guess. You see a turtle come out, you don't think it's until all of a sudden it's like the size of a bus, and you're like, wait a minute, there's something right here.
Like, oh, this sucks. This isn't going to turn out how I thought it was going to turn out. Yeah, that's a big no thanks on being in the water and seeing that. If I was on a big old boat, that would be pretty incredible to see something like that. But other than that, no thanks. That's on my no list. Well, Max, always a pleasure to have you on. It is, of course, not the last. Once your new book comes out from us at Beyond the Fray Publishing, we'll have you back on to chat about that. But please let, again, everybody know where to find you. And please mention all the, the groups or whatever you want on Facebook, and, of course, the website and where to find your books.
Well, let's see. I am the main fan page is on Facebook. It's on Twitter. I'm on Twitter, but I honestly don't do a lot on there. I actually have somebody managing the account for me. I just don't have time. But I'm on Facebook. The main fan page is Max Hawthorne's Cronus Rising novel series. That's managed by the admins and stuff. And then the one that I kind of handle more myself, my baby, it's a group called Max Hawthorne's Monsters and Marine Mysteries. If people want to check out the novels, if you go to either maxhawthorne.com or cronusrising.com, Cronus with a K, R-O-N-O-S, you can go to the free books page on there, and there's excerpts, free downloads of some of the novels and stuff. If you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read them all for free with the Kindle Unlimited program also. So it's good stuff. And people have, they get a free sample. They can see what they like, if they like it or not.
Yep, you got a new Krakenite coming real quick over here from Vegas.
Well, Kraken comes from the word crake, a German word crake, which means octopus, or crack. It's also pronounced that way. So really, you could pronounce it crackhead, but that might have negative connotations.
Yeah, it would. Yeah. I wasn't trying to get at that with the Krakenite. I was trying to be very just, cutesy with the words. But I like the Kraken heads. That's fine.
Yeah.
But you do have to make sure you say every syllable properly, or it does in fact sound like you're saying something else. So.
Or crakehead. I'm a crakehead.
I'm a crakehead. Crakehead. Just spit it out like you got that. Like kika. You got to put the tongue in the back of the throat a little bit, and then you're really going, wow, you just spit out a whole new dialect there. All right. Well, no, thank you so much, Max. Always, always, always a pleasure to have you on. And this time it was cool because we really touched on, a lot of different subjects.
Yes, I enjoyed it. My voice is almost gone, so I'm glad we're signing off.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Max. I'll talk to you soon.
Have a great one.
Bye.
Well, I'm so-and-so. I was given this name by my parents. I've been to such and such a college. I've done these things in my profession. I produce a little biography. Buddha says, forget it. There's nothing. That's some story. That's all gone. That's all past. I want to see the real you are now. Well, nobody knows who that is. Because we don't know ourselves except through listening to our echoes and consulting our memories. But then there's a real you, and that again leads us back to this question. Who are you? That is the real you. We shall see how they play with this exam by the koans to get you to come out of your shell and find out who you really are. They will say, no, we don't believe literally in reincarnation. That after your funeral, you will suddenly become somebody different, living somewhere else. They will say reincarnation means this, that if you sitting here now are really convinced that you're the same person who walked in the door half an hour ago, you're being reincarnated. If you are liberated, you will understand that you're not. The past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. There is only the present. That's the only real you that there is. The Zen master Dogen put it this way. He said, spring does not become summer. First there is summer, and then there is spring. When you settle down in the train to read your newspaper and so on, you are not the same person who a little while ago left the platform. If you think you are linking your moments up in the chain. And this is what binds you to the wheel of birth and death. But when you know that every moment in which you are is the only moment, this comes into Zen. A master will say to somebody, get up and walk across the room. And he comes back and he says, where are your footprints? They've gone. So where are you? Who are you? When we are asked who we are, we usually give a kind of recitation of a history.